What's up guys, Zach here with Dr. Eyeball MD. If you're new to the channel, welcome. If you are a subscriber, welcome. For today's video, let's do story time from the ER for an eye doctor. Let's go. So, as an eye doctor, as a resident in ophthalmology, someone who has gone to medical school and now is focusing just on the eye, treating all kinds of medical eye diseases, surgical eye diseases, doing surgery, lasers, injections, all that stuff. Anything wrong with the eyes can be treated by an ophthalmologist. Part of ophthalmology training is taking call at a hospital. Now, it just happens that the hospital that I take call for is actually the busiest emergency room in the country, and so I get a lot of calls. And I not only cover that hospital, but also 2 other hospitals at the same time while on that particular call. This night, I actually got called to see a young guy who was having sudden vision loss, painless vision loss in one eye. It just occurred all of a sudden. He was starting to see clouds in his vision, still decent vision, but very cloudy and hazy, like he was looking through smoke or fog or something. So the first thing that's going off in my mind for a young guy with no other history of eye problems, not really any significant past medical history, with sudden onset blurry vision is vitreous hemorrhage from a retinal tear or retinal detachment. Now, when I went to see this patient in particular, he told me he was an airline pilot for a major airline and he couldn't fly because you have to have 20/20 vision to be able to fly a plane. And so for him, he couldn't work. This was very scary to him, and he was obviously very dependent on his vision. So for me, I needed to figure out why he couldn't see and try to fix it. So I looked at the front part of the eye, the anterior segment exam, looking at the cornea, we looked at the iris, pupil, and in particular in him, what I'm looking for is looking through the pupil and looking into the gel of the eye. So I can light this up with the light, and I tilt it off to the side, and I get a cross section through the front part of the gel of the eye, the vitreous cavity. And what I'm looking for is something called a Schaefer's sign, which is pigment cells that are released during a retinal detachment, or possibly red blood cells. You can actually see individual red blood cells in the front part gel of the eye if there's blood in the eye, a vitreous hemorrhage in the eye. Sure enough, in him, the entire front part of the eye was normal, but the anterior vitreous, the anterior front gel part of the eye, had what looked to be red blood cells in it. So we know there's a bleed in the eye. Next step is we dilated the eye, meaning we expand the pupil so we can get a better view. Drops that actually expand the diameter of the pupil by working on the muscles of the iris, and then we can get a view into the back of the eye. So sure enough, in him, when I get a view back there, I can see blood, red blood. Think of it like a snow globe that someone has taken and shaken up, and now it's full of blood, and that blood doesn't just settle back to the bottom very quickly. It kind of stays stuck in the gel in the center part of the eye. Now for him, the important thing is to find the tear. Somewhere in the retina, which is the inner lining of the inside of the eye that's responsible for seeing, there was probably a tear. Why does that happen? So as we get older, the gel that makes up the volume of the inside of the eye shrinks. When it shrinks, it should pull away from the inside back of the eye. Sometimes it stays attached in one place, and if it stays attached in that one place on the retina, it may pull the retina and actually create a little tear there as it's trying to contract and pull away. When that happens, we get a little, either a horseshoe tear, so like a little flap tear in the retina, or just it pulls the retina completely off in a little circle and leaves a little hole behind where it used to be. So what is the problem with that? Well, think of the retina like wallpaper. We now suddenly have a tear in it, a little flap tear, and what can happen is the fluid inside the eye can actually seep back behind that wallpaper and peel the wallpaper off. If that happens, you have a retinal detachment, and that can be very bad, and you can have very, very poor vision from that, to the point where you can maybe only like count fingers. You can't even see the big E on the eye chart. Fortunately for him, the vision was just a little reduced. It was like 20/30 or 20/40, I can't remember exactly, due to the blood in the eye, just kind of dispersed blood inside the cavity of the eye. And what had happened is that gel had pulled on the retina, but it had pulled on a spot where there was a blood vessel, and so when it pulled, it ruptured that blood vessel, caused bleeding inside the eye. The key thing that we need to do now is we need to prevent that retina from detaching, from fluid getting back behind it and pulling off the retina. How do we do that? Laser. So I go up to the operating room. I know there's a laser up there somewhere. I go in this small little room full of like all these lasers and equipments. I finally find the right one. I go into one of the OR rooms and find the head mount that has the laser mounted on it, where I can actually shoot it into the eye. And I take it all down to the emergency room, into his room. He looks at me with wide eyes like, what are you about to do? And I explain it to him. He says, have you ever done this before? Because he thinks I'm about 18 years old. And I told him, yes, I've done it before. And that we need to do this so that you don't have a retinal detachment, because you have a tear that could further detach. So the key thing that we need to do is actually spot weld around that hole. Imagine this was on the inside. This was like a little hole or tear. We will put laser spots around it in 2 or 3 concentric circles to prevent it from detaching completely. So the laser's mounted on your head, and you focus it into the eye with a special lens, and actually make that laser barricade, and basically just spot welding the retina to prevent it from detaching further. And I was able to do it in him. Fortunately, there wasn't so much blood that I couldn't do it, and I was able to get the laser in, and the blood that was there will clear up over the next few weeks, and he should get back to perfect vision, and we'll just have to keep a close eye on him to make sure he doesn't have any holes or tears in the future. So that was just one of the success stories. One of the cool things about ophthalmology, actually getting to save someone's vision, prevent them from having progressive visual loss, and ultimately going blind in that eye. You know, if he had waited, or we hadn't recognized it and treated it appropriately, he could have lost vision in that eye, and then he couldn't have flown for the major airline that he did, because you have to have good vision for that. So really cool thing in ophthalmology that we were able to do. If you guys like this video, if you like hearing about these stories, things that we treat as medical doctors in ophthalmology, in the field of eye care, leave a like and subscribe down below. I can tell you guys some more stories. I see some crazy things in the emergency room. We treat some absolutely crazy things that you probably don't even know exist, and they're really cool. So leave a like and subscribe to the video. So leave a comment down below if you like the video, and if you have any questions about anything related to eye care, eye health, residency, medical school, any of that stuff. I love talking about it. I'm Zach with Dr. Eyeball MD, and I'll see you guys in the next one.